Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it is the voice of Chitown, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA Broadcast, Sam Wilson. All right, folks, we have a great show lined up for you today. I can already tell I've got way too much information, and we're going to have to trim some of this, but that's okay. Better to have too much than not enough. Never really a problem with your host. All right, show highlights today. We've got more hammer attacks, a lemonade stand altercation, a highlight, cooking on the trail. We got a lot of positive feedback about the camping and backpacking stove segment from last week's show. So we're going to incorporate some more of that, and we're going to go through some of the recipes and some of the methods that I use and have used over the years for hundreds upon hundreds of trail miles for cooking in the backcountry, and more Supreme Court decision implications. There was we had a number of conversations with folks that didn't either quite understand or get what we were talking about last week with the Supreme Court ruling that the police are not required to protect you. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth on that and try and balance all this out and have ourselves a good, fun show. As you know, we are politically neutral here at the MOA Broadcast. We just bring you the news and you make your own decisions the way the news used to do it. So, up first, I'm going to read you the headline, then we'll get right into it. This is a New York Post article. I've mentioned before, I like their style. They have a bit of a splashy style. It's kind of fun. And, just doing regular news articles can get boring. They kind of, give it a little fun. All right, here we go. Brute convicted in vicious subway hammer attack on New York City Health Department worker faces 25 years. This is from the New York Post. A maniac charged in a vicious subway hammer attack on a city health department worker is facing up to 25 years behind bars after being convicted by a Queens jury. That's Queens, New York. With his victim telling the Post she's still haunted by the senseless assault more than 3 years later. So this originally, bear with me here, because this originally took place, the assault took place in 2022. This article that I'm reading to you now is about the conviction of the man. It's finally gone through court. He had a 6-week trial or whatever. He's been convicted. Both of these articles went kind of all over the place, so I combined the 2022 article and the 2025 article to get more of a streamlined narrative here, or timeline. So we'll go through this. Maybe once a year I have a mild recurrence of one symptom, but other than that I am fine. Nina Rothschild, she was the victim, said Thursday, one day after 60-year-old William Blunt was convicted of robbery and assault. But I do live with the memory of the attack. And this is true. I don't know about you, but I have been violently assaulted more than once. It never goes away. And in fact, people talk about your mind goes into, slow motion or whatever else whenever these things kind of happen, physical altercations, whatever. That's probably true. I don't really know exactly how to describe, but it's almost, in some ways, it's almost like it does time-lapse photography while this is happening, or what you're seeing is time-lapse. You see chunks of it rather than just a steady slow-mo image, and sometimes the sound is almost completely cut out and it seems to come back in at the end of the situation of the violent assault. And the interesting thing is, after it's over, months or years or whatever later, when you think about it, it's almost like popping a VCR tape in. And if you don't know what one of those are, I don't know how you found this broadcast, but it's like popping a VCR tape in there. You can speed it up, slow it down, but review it almost perfectly. Turn the volume on, off, volume up, down, and kind of watch the whole thing. Your mind does some amazing things, despite the horrific occurrence that is happening outside your body while you're being brutally beaten. Anyways, back to the story. Unfortunately, I remember basically the entire thing from start to finish, which is basically what I was saying. I agree with her. I believe her 100%. She told NBC News, "There isn't a day that goes by when I don't think of it. I'm very happy and relieved that it's behind me and he will go away for a very long time. I never saw my attacker, but I remember starting to go down the subway steps and feeling this blow to my head, which I initially thought was a baseball bat," said Rothschild, then 57 at the time. "Stop, stop, stop," was what she was yelling, which of course was fine, but was completely and utterly useless. She sounds like a practical lady. I like her already. So what happened was, if you watch the video, it's a horrible video. Absolutely horrible. She is walking down the steps going into a subway station in New York City. Sorry to say, yet again, we wind up back in New York. We kind of gave him a reprieve last week, but we're back now. And you see this guy walk up behind her and just start swinging on top of her head with a hammer. And I mean, she goes down and he wails on her more and then takes her purse and runs away. Two cops on a lower platform heard Rothschild's screams for help, which is why it is always important to make some noise. If you can't create distance or fight back, make noise. You never know who's right around the corner. In this case, it happened to be two cops. They came to her aid very quickly. She called the NYPD response nothing short of miraculous. And I will say, despite we've had some interesting interactions we've reported on in the past with police officers, I got to say all the interactions I ever had with New York police officers were very positive. They were, for lack of a better term, very cool when it came to interactions with the public. You know, when you go to like a small town or some hick town in the middle of nowhere, they're trying to get you hemmed up in a speeding thing or you know, speed trap or whatever little tiny violations. My experience with the New York police was they weren't really worried about that, man. They were trying to keep the big fires, you know, under control, and they weren't really worried if you were doing 2 miles over or whatever it was. I never ever got pulled over for speeding there. I'm sure people have, obviously, don't get me wrong, but I had positive interactions with the New York police officers that I encountered. So anyway, that was a nice compliment. She called the NYPD response nothing short of miraculous. What happened is she was walking down the stairs at the Queens Plaza EM&R station. I know that area very well. We'll get back to that later. On February 24, 2022, when Blunt came up behind her, slammed her in the head with a hammer 13 times. This lady is lucky to be alive. If all of those blows had been full power or landed in the right way, can you imagine what 13 hammer blows to a 57-year-old woman would do, or anybody really? Man, how fortunate. Hit her in the head with a hammer 13 times, took her bag, leaving her screaming in pain on the ground, according to police. The man, Blunt, allegedly, who already had a half-dozen busts and served prison time in the 80s on a drug conviction, was nabbed immediately after by alert cops and booked on attempted murder, assault, and robbery charges. Police later arrested a second person, Denise Alston, for allegedly using the victim's bank card. After a 6-week trial, he was found guilty of robbery, assault, and other charges on Wednesday. According to the Queens DA, Melinda Katz, this defendant repeatedly bashed an innocent strap hanger in the head with a hammer. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with New York City and their subway system, a strap hanger is a term for someone who rides the subway. It comes from, they used to, and in fact, up until, I don't know how many years ago, they may still have straps on some of them, I don't know. But they had on the top bar that's like a little bit taller than your head, if you're, 5'10", 6 foot, whatever, there would be that bar that ran, parallel with the car. There'd be these little vinyl or leather, whatever they were, plastic straps that hung from the bar. And that's what you would hold on to when you're going on the subway, because sometimes it's so packed and tight in there, you don't have good footing. And some of those subway rides are surprisingly rough. I will say that despite a lot of criticism, New York subway system has phenomenal coverage. Between the subways and the bus, there are very few areas you can't get to relatively efficiently. There may be some weights involved, but it gives you very, very good coverage. So anyway, we're getting off track, as I am wont to do. The straps hang off there, and when you hang off the straps, that was a term for subway riders, strap hangers. So anyway, to continue the Queen's DA statement, the victim, who was simply trying to use the subway, as millions of New Yorkers do every day, suffered multiple skull fractures. In the wake of the horrific attack, Rothschild bemoaned the rise in crime in the Big Apple, calling the city quite threatening. I feel like every day somebody's telling me about another assault. And when asked about New Yorkers fleeing the city, she said, "I think it's very sad, but it's also completely understandable, and I only hope this wave of horror will come to an end." She said she still rides the subway, but not as frequently. So, man, what a horrific incident. Can you imagine if that was you or your mother or grandmother walking down to the train station to get on the train and getting their head beat in 13 times with a hammer? Man, glad that lady is okay. Apparently, she came out of it very well. She said she has no medical symptoms from the incident other than the occasional kind of dizziness that hits her about once a year, a condition that has sort of a complicated name, she says. Anyway, she said, overall, I'm very lucky. That area of Queens is not too far away from I hope they're still in business. I should have checked before doing this. I usually try and check up and see if restaurants and businesses that I frequented several years ago are still going strong. This one was really good. There was a restaurant called Pio Pio, and they were a Peruvian restaurant. And for those of you that aren't familiar with all types or a lot of different types of Hispanic food, most people in North America or America, the U.S., when they think of Hispanic food, they think of Mexican food. And that is by no means, ubiquitous or the same type. It's not all the same as Mexican food. Mexican food does have a tendency, some of it's very spicy. They got a lot of good dishes. I love Mexican food. Of the Hispanic foods, it's probably overall my favorite type. But when you start getting into South and Central America and other places, there are a lot of different types of Hispanic food. The Caribbean, you got Dominican and Puerto Rican food, and a lot of them are nowhere near as spicy as Mexican food. In fact, some of them are almost bland. I remember the first time I had, I think it was either Puerto Rican or Dominican food, I was shocked because it had very little spice and kick to it. It just surprised me. It wasn't what I was expecting. That being said, the restaurant, Pio Pio, it was a Peruvian place. They had these rotisserie chickens, and we would go in there and eat family style. If you're not familiar with family style, that's not extremely common in a lot of North American places or U.S. places. Family style is when they bring out several big dishes and everybody just kind of like scoops off of it in a communal way. If you got the right people that aren't hogs and try and take it all, all the good stuff, it's a great way to eat. There's all this food and you just help yourself. And it's a lot of fun. It's a great way to dine, get to know people. It has, there's a lot of bonding that goes on, if you want to call it that, while eating family style. It's a pretty neat way to do it. The other thing, though, they had, if you've never had tostones are it's a dish. So it's plantains. A plantain is in the banana family. And they're typically, I think for tostones, they're done when they're not quite fully ripe yet. Maduros are when they are mature. They're sweeter. But the tostones, they take these big plantains and they basically fry them and smash them flat and then refry them or some kind of process. I never made them. I just ate them. But it's like this deep fried large banana slice. It may sound kind of strange to an American palate, but they are delicious. And they're the cornerstone of a number of these other Hispanic type diets. They're very good. Very good. And you would take the rotisserie, they specialize in these chickens, and you would have the rotisserie chickens and the tostones, and you would dip them in this ají sauce, which was a green sauce. I had to look up what the ingredients were. Where did it go? Let's see. It is a spicy Peruvian green sauce with cilantro, jalapenos, and some type of like mayo or something similar. It's really smooth. It's really creamy, and it's got some zip to it. It is so good. You can just dip anything from that restaurant in there, probably any restaurant almost, and it's delicious. But the ají sauce, and it was just fantastic. So great memory. The one that we used to go to wasn't too far from where this whole thing took place at Queens Plaza, and Pio Pio is the name. If you're ever in New York, I strongly recommend hitting them up. Their chickens, the family style dining, the tostones, and a number of other things. And then I believe I had their flan, which is a type of custard dessert. Fantastic. Really good stuff. Okay, we got to move on. Next page. Let me fight through my papers here. We go, oh boy, here we go. We are back to Florida, the state that keeps on giving. This is the headline: Man 45, this is from the Smoking Gun, committed battery after being denied free after being denied free refill at kids' lemonade stand. Investigators say Stephen Cusimano, 45, was walking in a Clearwater neighborhood in Florida around 7:30 p.m. Tuesday when he observed a lemonade stand being run by several juveniles and the victim. It doesn't make it clear in the article. I don't know if the victim was a juvenile or underage also or not. Whatever. Cusimano purchased one glass of lemonade, then became then became then became very angry when he was not allowed to refill his cup, according to a criminal complaint. They show the picture. He looks like a rough customer. Seen it right. Cusimano then allegedly grabbed the victim by the wrist aggressively while standing in a fighting stance, telling the victim he would beat her up. Cusimano left the residential area on foot, but was quickly apprehended by an officer. During a police questioning, he reportedly admitted to the entire sequence of events, but claimed that he grabbed the victim due to her talking, how can I put this nicely, talking poo-poo to me. He used a different word. We're not going to use it on the radio. The complaint does not list the age of the victim, so it was a female. Can you imagine you're walking down the street, you see a kid's lemonade stand, you walk over, you pay for a glass of lemonade, and then when you don't get a free refill, you grab this kid or this lady, this female, by the arm and tell her you're going to beat her up. Cusimano, the aggressor allegedly, who cops describe as a transient, was charged with felony battery, an enhanced count due to his extensive rap sheet, which includes multiple prior convictions for battery, as well as convictions for trespassing, narcotics possession, disorderly intoxication, assault with a deadly weapon, theft, and disorderly conduct. He sounds like an accomplished fellow. Locked up in the county jail on $5,000 bond, in lieu of $5,000 bond, he has pleaded not guilty. Good luck, pal. And next time, hands off the lemonade stand employees. Okay, we've got one little article here we're going to do on the lab-cultured meat, which we discussed a couple of episodes ago, and then we're going to get right into the outdoor cooking, because we're blowing through time rapidly here. Mississippi has joined Florida and Alabama in banning lab-grown meat in the state. If you recall from a couple of episodes, or if you are informed, you probably already know the lab-cultured meat is when they take some cells from an animal, put it into a bioreceptor, and grow a type of meat, I guess. I'm not going to make any accusations or make any strong statements, but in my mind, when I hear that, I just think of all kinds of things that can go wrong with that process. Anyway, and they want to feed this to us. They want to do this on a large scale and feed it to us. Okay, House Bill 1006 was enacted on March 21 and will prohibit the manufacture, sale, or distribution of food products produced from cultured animal cells beginning July 1. Any person found in violation of the law will face fines up to $500 or jail time up to 3 months. Retail food establishments could lose their licenses if they sell or distribute lab-grown meat products. The bill passed unanimously through the legislature, and though Governor Tate Reeves, Republican, did not sign it, he did not veto it either, leading to its passage as law. So there you go. Another state joins the ban on cultured meat. Let me get a sip here, folks. Okay. Now, we're going to do our listener email segment today. We're only going to do one because it leads directly into our trail cooking and alcohol stove and so forth segment. This is from Tony in California. Hello. In the last episode, you talked about stoves for backpacking and your preference for alcohol stoves. Can you be more specific, and how well do these work with freeze-dried meals? I typically use freeze-dried or MRE entrees when hiking in California and would like to try the lighter alcohol stoves if they will work with these. Thank you, and keep up the great work, Tony. Thank you, Tony. We will try. Okay, we got a lot to unpack here on this, and this segment actually got a lot of good feedback last week. So I'm glad that happened. This is something that I've been doing and using for a couple of decades now. Really enjoy it. I did make a few more notes. If you see me, if you're watching the video version of this, if you see me looking down and reading more, it's than usual, which is pretty sparse. It's just because I want to make sure I get all these details in there. A lot to do. Okay, when it comes to alcohol stoves, I'll tell you the one that I use and have enjoyed the most over the years is called the Trangia. That's spelled Trangia. That being said, there are a bunch of them. If you go to Amazon and you type in, I'm just using Amazon for an example, use whatever you want, but Amazon is pretty consistent and I do a lot of ordering there. If you type in alcohol stove or spirit burner stove, you will see all kinds of examples of these Trangia type stoves. I don't usually endorse or recommend getting knockoffs, but you can get one of these knockoff Trangia stoves for like $10 if you want to give it a try. Then I would strongly recommend going to the real McCoy because they make an excellent stove. I think they're made or manufactured for the Swedish or Swiss military. I can't remember. That's immaterial. They're just a very well-made stove. Had a lot of good hours cooking on them. Okay, that being said, when it comes to freeze-dried meals and MRE entrees, if you're not familiar with MREs, that stands for Meals Ready to Eat. It's a military meal pack. It comes in a big plastic bag, and you cut it open. There's the entree, which is the main course, and there's like usually a cookie and a cracker or some kind of piece of cake, and then like a soup base, a drink powder mix, all kind of stuff in there, candy, and this and that. The whole thing is designed to give you complete nutrition for one or more meals, depending on what you get. Freeze-dried and MREs are fine. Nothing wrong with them. I've used those, and I still use them very, very sparsely on occasion for certain applications. If you're not familiar with freeze-dried meals, this is a meal it's basically freeze-dried. It's a whole process. I'm not going to explain it. But what it is, it's like a lump in there in this vacuum-sealed bag. You tear it open, you pour in boiling water, close the bag back up, let it sit for like 10 minutes or so, and then you open it up, stir it, and it's basically reconstituted, and it's ready to eat. Freeze-dried meals, the ones that taste good, you have to go by trial and error. I've actually bought a couple for this episode, didn't have a chance to eat them and test them out, but I'll get to that in the next episode. If you got any questions or ones you'd like me to specifically try, shoot us an email at info@gearconvoy.com. That being said, they're very easy. You eat them right out of the bag, so there's no real cleanup other than your spoon. All you got to do is boil. Usually it's like 2 cups of water approximately. Pour it in there and eat it. With MREs, typically you can either put it in boiling water or you put it in this plastic sleeve and it comes with a little heater. When it combines with water, the chemicals in there generate heat. It warms the meal up. It's great for, no fuss, no muss. You don't have to dirty up dishes and trays and bowls and all that kind of stuff other than your spoon. That being said, freeze-dried meals, when they're reconstituted, they frequently taste like a styrofoam log, okay, as far as like texture. The other problem with freeze-dried meals, in my experience, one of the reasons I stopped using them, aside from they're pretty high cost. Some of them are $10 to $15 just for an entree. Now, if you're going on a 3 to 5 day trip, that can add up real quickly. The problem, though, that I found was they tend to stick like a log in your colon. And no big deal after one, but after a couple on the trail, it starts building up. MREs, some of them are actually pretty really tasty, actually. They sometimes do the same thing. They can play tricks with your digestion, is all I'll say. And you don't want things to get too tricky with that while you're out on the trail, instead of in the comforts of your home bathroom and your own porcelain throne. And I think you can put 2 and 2 together on that one. So that being said, the best thing to do is try them out. What I like to do, though, is dehydrated meals, and we'll explain exactly what that is. So with dehydrated meals, typically I will start with a meat, and I only use ground beef. You can dehydrate and such chicken and pork, but ground beef is by far the easiest and most consistent to do this with. You're going to want to use like 90% or low-fat ground beef because the less fat and moisture content, the better it's going to dehydrate. You can look this up online, on YouTube, on the search engines. It's very easy to do. But what you're going to want to do essentially is you brown the meat first, season it up. I typically season it pretty well. That way you have to use, excuse me, you don't have to use nearly as much seasoning on the trail. So I'll season it up, garlic powder, a little bit of cayenne pepper, whatever it is that you use, salt, pepper, this, that, and the other. Then you're going to drain off the grease, let it cool. And the easiest way is, even if you don't have a dehydrator, you can do it in your oven. And I'm not going to go in that whole process, but look it up, dehydrating ground beef in your oven. It's super easy. It cannot be easier. And this stuff will keep, a couple of weeks to a couple of months in a Ziploc bag. And I think like 2 years if you vacuum seal it and put it in your freezer. So now you've got your meat taken care of. Then the other two options are what kind of carb are you going to use? I use either rice. I prefer basmati rice. Great texture. I love it when it's when it's cooked properly. It's got great texture, a little bit of an aromatic scent and flavor to it, and just the texture when eating it is very good. My favorite rice. So basmati rice, or you can use some type of pasta. You can use like shells. I prefer bow tie pasta. You're not going to want to use spaghetti. In my opinion, you can break it in half, but if you use it full length, it's just more difficult to manage with a longer noodle. And you don't want to use the real thick pastas because they require a longer cooking time. That being said, you can do almost anything you want. They're very flexible. But I prefer bow tie and basmati rice for my two carbs. You can also do vegetables. Dehydrating this stuff is easy as it gets. For doing vegetables, I'll typically do red, green, and orange bell peppers, and I'll do onions. You want to slice them. This takes a little trial and error, but a medium thickness slice, and then you do the same thing. You're going to dehydrate them in your dehydrator. If you don't have a dehydrator, you can easily do this in your oven at home. Super easy. So now you've got a couple of ingredients that you combine with hot sauce, with salt, pepper, garlic, your oil. I use avocado oil, but olive oil works great too. And a little bit of butter. You can make some fantastic meals in the backcountry. Let me check my notes here, make sure I'm not leaving some big stuff behind. Okay. Oh, this is what I was going to say. This is why I wrote this down. So bringing along tomato sauce is not as difficult as you think. If you've ever made fruit leather is basically whenever you lay out fruit or fruit paste and dehydrate it, and it's like a fruit roll up, only it's not fake and have a bunch of fake sugar and other junk in it. You can do the same thing with tomato paste, or what I like to do is you can get tomato paste in a tube at a lot of grocery stores or online. You bring that along, it's shelf stable, and you can use that for your recipes while on the trail. Great resource. Like it a lot. Gives it a lot of good flavor, and you can spice up a lot of meals. Give them a little bit of thickness, a little bit of tomato flavor, and so forth by using that tomato paste in a tube. Okay, we got to take a break, folks. When we get back, we're going to continue with this and give you some of our favorite recipes, and then get into, yet again, the implications of that Supreme Court decision. Stay tuned. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally and beyond.
You're listening to the MOA Broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? And we are back from the break with more Make It Out Alive broadcast with your host, Sam Wilson. Okay, to recap briefly, before we went to the break, we were talking about doing dehydrated meals. We discussed the pros and cons of the freeze-dried foods and MREs. Again, both of those are fine. So MREs, they typically run about $8 to $12, maybe $15 per meal if you buy them online, depending on where you get them and so forth. You can, however, buy the entree, which is like the main thing, like a chili mac or pizza, or which wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be years ago. You can buy the entrees though, and some of them are very good. Again, nothing against those, but I prefer. The problem is these things, all of them, the freeze dried, the MREs and stuff, they have so much salt and preservatives and other stuff, and they don't sit right in your stomach. I would not want to eat those for more than like one meal every once in a while. If I was hungry and I was on a battlefield or I was in a war zone or whatever somewhere, of course, that'd be fantastic. But if I can plan ahead, I'd much rather have something that tastes like home cooking, keeps your digestive system going smoothly, and it tastes very, very good with very little in the way of preservatives. So again, nothing against MREs or freeze dried. Some of those are very good. I like making dehydrated at home myself though, because number one, it's lighter. When you tear open a full MRE, there's so much plastic. I'm not an environmentalist or a tree hugger, but when I see all of that plastic inside of an MRE that just goes into the trash can, it's enough to make a grown man cry. So, it's horrible. So anyhow, start with ground beef, typically 90%, the low fat, 90% fat free or whatever the explanation is for that. You don't want to get the fattier ground beef, otherwise you'll end with a lot greasier and moister beef, which is not going to dehydrate as well. So get the 90% or better. The leaner the better, essentially. You want to season it, brown it, and then dehydrate it in either your dehydrator or your oven. Again, look up on YouTube on that. Also, this is why I wrote some of this stuff down. I was supposed to make a cooking video this week for our Patreon followers, those that get the video version of this. You can get the information for that on gearconvoy.com. There's a tab for the MOA broadcast and see how to get the video version of it all. We get exclusive content for our subscribers. I was going to do a cooking video on a meal this week. I didn't get it done because we had so much windy weather. Hopefully, it would have been impossible to do with an alcohol stove, even in the backyard. So hopefully this week can be better. We'll get a video done of that. Also, let me know if you have any meal suggestions you would like to do for our subscribers. We'll make a video of it, show you how to cook it on an alcohol stove. I've been doing this for a couple of decades. We can do almost anything. It's not that hard to do, really. And that's what I want to encourage people is get out and try this stuff. If the alcohol stove isn't for you, fine. Get a pocket rocket or a jet boil or whatever, white gas stove. I don't care. But the important thing is do it. And that's what I was going to suggest last week before we jump back into the recipes here. What usually winds up happening is over time you develop a system that works for you. You got to be careful. You don't want to just cherry pick this dehydrated meals with this stove, with this cook pot, and you mix and match too much. They may not work as well as if you get a system. For me, I actually use an 8-inch. I don't use nonstick much, but in the wilderness, I do use a nonstick skillet with a foldable handle because large surface area boils water very quickly. It has a lid, and it also is so much easier to clean. I've used straight aluminum or stainless or titanium. Now, when you get food burned on there, it's almost impossible to get it off. So I use a nonstick 8-inch skillet. I use the Trangia stove, alcohol stove, and I put it inside of a little, wind foil to protect it, windscreen to protect it. You can make those at home or buy them. With that system, I know I can typically boil water in 7 to 8 minutes, 2 cups of water in 7 to 8 minutes. I can have a dinner going in this amount of time, and I got my whole thing down. And my ingredients and my meals are built and based around that. So what I would suggest is try some of that. That's why I recommend, I never recommend knockoffs, but if you're going to buy a Chinese version of a product, this would be the time. So try different stoves, different cook pots, and find what works to you and for you, and then get a system and stick with it. And, I know off the top of my head, I can almost give you times for every single stage of this under normal conditions. So that's what I would say about that. And it is a lot of fun. You can do this in your backyard. You can use, so these dehydrated meals are great. We'll get to that. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get sidetracked here and we'll never get done. Okay, so start with the beef, a meat. I already covered that. Chicken and pork are more complicated. Some people use it. I don't. Got it. Brown and dehydrate. Select your vegetables. Dehydrated onions and red, green, and orange bell peppers were mine. Onions actually dehydrate and rehydrate very, very well. I didn't expect that. They do. So what I'll also do is I'll bring along like a piece of fresh fruit or vegetable. Like I'll bring along a potato. A small potato, like a tennis ball sized potato, just toss it in one of my pockets on my pack. And if I feel like adding potato to my meal that night, I can, because it cooks in the rehydrating system very well. Or if I want to throw in some avocado, or if I want to throw in, something else, you have a little bit of cilantro. You can do that. There's a lot of freedom with this method because you're doing it all from scratch. So let's continue. You choose your carb. We discussed that, rice or pasta, the basmati rice and the bow tie pasta. Those are my favorites. Let's see here. What you do is you take your rice, the dehydrated ground beef, and all this stuff, and you put it in the little individual Ziploc baggies before you go into the woods in pre-measured portions. Like there's those Ziploc bags that are real small. They're smaller than like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a slice of bread. And that's what I put them in. They put the right around a half cup of rice, and then right around when you take, like, let's say you dehydrate a pound of the ground beef, divide it up into quarters, or do a pound and a half and divide that into quarters is what I usually do, because you're going to want more calories than you think on the trail. Okay, especially if you're covering a lot of miles. So then you've got little pre-measured packages. I'll take and I'll dehydrate the onions and the peppers and whatever else I want to do. Look up dehydrating. There are almost infinite possibilities. I'll dehydrate those separately and put them in a bag, a Ziploc bag. So whenever I'm cooking, I'll be like, you know what? I want to throw some extra red pepper in, and I will. A little bit less onion. Okay, fine. This much garlic. And you can kind of have some fun with it. And that contributes to the enjoyment on the trail. I did this while backpacking. You can do this while camping. You can do it in your backyard. You can do it in your kitchen. These work great for preparedness meals because you can take all the components for a family-sized meal, whether it's a family of 1, 2, or 8, and put them into one Ziploc bag, one big one. And then if the power goes out or if there's an emergency, all you got to do is have boiling water and you have a fantastic home-cooked meal. It really is. They're really great for that reason, not just for the backcountry. So, okay, let's go back to let's see, I also bring along, salt, pepper, garlic powder, hot sauce. What you want to do is go to Amazon or whatever your favorite supplier is, and if you do a search for mini hot sauce bottles, you'll be able to buy like bulk packs of anywhere from 5 to 100 mini Tabasco or other type hot sauce bottles. These work great. And you take, and then you put a little bit of avocado oil in a container. I have all these things it fits into a small bag that goes in my cooking bag. It all fits inside the pan. It's not nearly as much as it sounds like. And I'll also have a small container with some real butter, like grass-fed butter. Some people are going to say that's not going to keep on the trail. I've been doing it for 20-something years or more. I'd have to actually count now. With taking butter on a 3 to 4 day trip, even in summer conditions, I've never had a problem. You do what's best for you. Make sure you're safe. But I'm telling you what I've done. I don't want to encourage anyone to get sick, but I've never gotten sick while doing that. So there you go. Let's see. The hot sauce bottles, the miniature ones, are perfect size for like a 3 to 4 day trip, and you'll be surprised how much difference a little bit of hot sauce makes on the trail. Really gives you some kick. Then I have a small reusable container that I put my avocado oil in. I like avocado oil. It doesn't smoke as much, but you could use any oil, whatever you prefer. That's that. Now you've got a lot of versatility when you're actually cooking a meal, and you can either use all that or use none of it. If you pre-season your ground beef whenever you brown it and cook it, you can use very little seasoning, so you don't have to do much at all. The way this works, though, is... Let's see. Oh, the other meat that I'll bring along is individual Spam packets. If you do that, if you do the dehydrated ground beef and Spam packets, now you've got a whole bunch of different meals between Spam and ground beef as your 2 meats, and then rice or a pasta as your 2 carbs, and then your vegetables and everything else. You've got a wide variety of different flavors and meals that you can make. And here's the best part. I'll make sure I didn't miss anything. Yada, yada, yada. Dip-a-doo-da. Yes. Cooking. All you have to do to prepare all this is you take your pot or your pan or whatever you use. You put in your meat and your rice portions that have already been pre-measured at home. Just dump them in. And then the rule of thumb is in the backcountry, when you're rehydrating like this, you add enough water to basically cover all the ingredients, and then you go from there. You can add a little bit more water if you want to make it a little soupier. I don't typically recommend adding less water because then you can have it a little undercooked if there's not enough water for the meat or the rice to absorb. But cover your ingredients with water and go from there. If you're using pasta, I'll typically add the pasta a few minutes later into the process so it doesn't get overcooked. But honestly, it's almost impossible to go wrong, and a little bit of trial and error is what you're going to need to do to get it figured out for you. That's why doing this in the backyard for fun as a family thing or a personal endeavor, whatever, is a lot of fun. So you'll take your water, You'll put your meat and your carb option in there and your dehydrated vegetables in there and whatever seasoning you want. I'll let it sit for about 5 minutes while I'm getting my stove and everything else set up. That allows everything to start absorbing moisture. Then you fire up your stove, the Trangia in this case for me, you use whatever you want. Bring everything up to a boil with the lid on there, bring it up to a boil. And then you're going to do one of two things from that point. If you have a pot cozy, which is like a Reflectix, if you know what Reflectix is, you'll have to look that up if you don't. I don't got time to get into that. It's like a cozy that you slide over your pot and it keeps insulated. If you've got a pot cozy, you'll then take it off after it's boiling, put it in the pot cozy, cover it up, and let it sit for 15, 20 minutes, and you're going to come back and everything's cooked to perfection. It's like magic. If you don't have a pot cozy, because I usually use a pan whenever I do this, because I like doing bacon and eggs in that pan in the morning, then what you'll do is after you get it to a boil, on the Trangia, there's what's called a simmer ring. A simmer ring is just what it sounds like. It's a small metal ring that slides on top of the stove, and it chokes the flame down until it simmers instead of full strength to bring it to a boil. And you're going to let it simmer for 15 to 20 minutes on your stove. Same thing. When it's done, it's perfectly cooked. Typically let it cool for a couple of minutes and finish, add your little bit of hot sauce, a little bit of seasoning, whatever you want to do. It's amazing. While everybody else is sitting there eating freeze-dried meals or MREs or a Cliff Bar for their dinner, they're going to smell what literally is a home-cooked meal, super easy, coming out of your stove or your pan while you're getting ready to eat dinner. What I will do is I'll set it up to boil, and then I'll put it on simmer, and I'll go make camp. I'll put my tent up, get the fire going, get a cup of coffee going, whatever it is. And when that's done, I've got dinner ready and waiting for me. Once it gets to the simmer level, it's set it and forget it. Nothing else required. Super easy, man. So I strongly recommend this for both the trail and at home emergencies. You can vacuum seal those ingredients and toss them in the freezer or whatever, and then you've got ready-made meals to just rip open the packaging and toss them in boiling water, and you got a home-cooked meal. You got to try it. It does not have a funny flavor. It tastes amazing when you rehydrate this stuff. I was surprised. Okay, let's see. Yada, yada, yada. Did we miss anything else? I don't think we got any more time on this. Yeah. I will say, again, the Trangia is one of my absolute favorite stuff. It works great. I'm not getting paid for that. There's no endorsement there. I just love the product. Let's see. We covered that. Cooking cycle. Add a little bit later. There's the choo-choo train in the background. Yeah, that's it. I can tell you from experience, over the course of the next couple of days, while everyone else's colon is getting absolutely punished by freeze-dried meals, by MREs, by Cliff Bars, and other styrofoam and cardboard-tasting food products, they're going to be, when you start cooking, they're going to start pulling up and watching and offering to trade you some of their food for a couple of bites of yours. I almost promise you. It's happened to me on almost every trip I've been on whenever I do this. So there you go. I'll give you a couple of my favorite meals, and then we got to get moving on or we're going to run out of time. So these are three of my top favorites. Mexican beef and rice. This is very simple. Ground beef, beans, peppers, onions, tomatoes, and rice with cheddar cheese sauce and taco seasoning. For cheddar cheese sauce, you can substitute cheddar cheese powder, which you can get at the grocery store. Great. It's a great product. Sometimes I leave out the beans for obvious reasons, and you can figure that out on your own. On the trail, you don't want to do anything to unnecessarily upset your stomach. We'll leave it at that. Beefy mac and cheese. This one is amazing. Ground beef, peppers and onions. And again, you can add or subtract ingredients that you like or don't like. But red peppers is what I like in this one, and onions. The pasta shells or bow ties, both are great. And I add powdered milk and cheddar cheese powder for the cheese sauce. This one is amazing, and it smells. When somebody is sitting over there eating a granola bar and you're eating beefy mac and cheese that tastes home-cooked, believe me, man, you're the king of the trail. And then tacos, one of my other favorites. Ground beef or Spam, with this one works very well, with or without rice, or not, up to you. Peppers, onions, tomato paste from the tube or dehydrated, and hot sauce. While this one's cooking, towards the end as it's simmering, you can heat your tortillas up on the lid of your stove while that's going. And then you've got nice warm tortillas or you can wave them over the fire or over your stove when you're done carefully, whatever. That's up to you. So again, you want to avoid things that are going to cause stomach issues out in the backwoods, folks. Sometimes there is not enough toilet paper in the world when you're out, 2 days away from civilization. There are also tons of recipes on the internet that you can get to. They're way more in depth than what I got into here. So look up dehydrated camping or backpacking meals or dehydrated food recipes. There's so many, and it's a great tool. Okay, let's move on. We get back to this is the Supreme Court case we discussed last week. The gist of it is the Supreme Court has ruled essentially that police do not have to protect you. Most people think, okay, the police car pulls up, it says to protect and to serve on the side of the car. Let's get into this and we'll see what this means. I'm going to read some of this because it's not too long, but it's several minutes. It's going to be easier than me just trying to give a breakdown. So here we go. During divorce, this is the town of Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, a Supreme Court case. During divorce proceedings, Jessica Linehan Gonzalez, a resident of Castle Rock, Colorado, obtained a permanent restraining order against her ex-husband, Simon, who had been, or Simone, I don't know, there's no accent mark, but who had been stalking her, requiring him to remain at least 100 yards from her and her 4 children. Her son, Jesse, who is not Simon's biological child, and daughters Rebecca, Catherine, and Leslie, which I guess they shared together, except during specified visitation time. Let me get a drink here, please. Okay. Now we go back to the case. On June 22nd, 1999, at approximately 5:15 p.m., Simon kidnapped the 3 girls from their home in violation of the restraining order. Jessica called the police at approximately 7:30 p.m., 8:30 p.m., and 10:10 p.m. on June 22nd and 12:15 a.m. on June 23rd, so into the night and early morning, and visited the police station in person at 12:40 a.m. on June 23rd. This is all in the same, basically, night, early morning of June 23rd. Prior to the second call, Simon had called Jessica and stated that he had the daughters with him at an amusement park in Denver, Colorado. That's about 30 minutes away from Castle Rock, where I guess they resided. The police did nothing for 8 hours. In one of the other articles that I read, I don't know the veracity of this, but it stated that one of the officers went out and had dinner while this was all going on. Who knows? At approximately 3:20 a.m. on June 23rd, the same night, early morning, Simon appeared at the Castle Rock police station and was killed in a shootout with the officers at the station. A search of his vehicle revealed the dead bodies of the 3 daughters, who were determined to have been shot and killed sometime prior to arrival at the police station. So apparently, if it was him, allegedly, whatever, I don't know how you want to put this, but they were executed or killed before Simon arrived at the police station for his shootout, where he was killed. Man. Gonzalez filed suit in the United States District Court for the District of Colorado against Castle Rock, Colorado, its police department, and the 3 individual police officers with whom she had spoken with, claiming she was deprived of her right to enforcement of the restraining order, without due process of law. The due process claim was dismissed, but the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals reversed in part and found that the mandatory arrest provisions, he was supposed to have been arrested for this restraining order violation, according to the restraining order paperwork, I guess. The mandatory arrest provisions created a property interest in enforcement. Another rehearing reached the same conclusion. So the appeals court is siding with Jessica Gonzalez. The court also affirmed the finding that the 3 individual officers had qualified immunity and as such could not be sued. So for those of you not in the States who are not familiar with qualified immunity, another long story there, but basically they were in the commission of their duties, and so they can't be held liable for the whole situation. So that part of the lawsuit's dead. But the appeals court ruled she can proceed, apparently, with the part about the not being arrested mandatorily. Now, it goes to the Supreme Court. Opinion of the court. The Supreme Court reversed the 10th Court's decision, reinstating the District Court's order of dismissal. The court's majority opinion by Justice Antonin Scalia held that enforcement of the restraining order was not mandatory under Colorado law. Were a mandate for enforcement to exist, it would not create an individual right to enforcement, let me get this right, that could be considered a protected entitlement under the precedent of Board of Regents of State Colleges v. Roth. So, long story short, they did not have to enforce, according to the Supreme Court, the arrest portion of this restraining order, even though it was violated, and it basically mandated, in a way, his arrest. Justice David Souter wrote a concurring opinion, using the reasoning that enforcement of a restraining order is a process, not the interest protected by the process, and that there is not due process protection for processes. So very complicated. Here is I don't have time to get into the dissenting opinion. The bottom line is this. This case is a landmark Supreme Court case that established that police departments have no constitutional duty to enforce restraining orders, meaning a victim of domestic violence does not have a right to have a restraining order enforced by the police. What are some of the broader implications of that? This decision affirmed the principle that state and local government officials have no affirmative duty to protect the public from harm they did not create. It has been a controversial decision, with critics arguing that it allows police to ignore restraining orders and other enforcements. What is the point? Number one, I think most people don't know this. And number two, this is not against the police, not against the Supreme Court. We're not railing against anyone. It's be aware, folks, that sometimes you have to create your own protection or your own way out. And that is the point of the MOA, the Make It Out Alive broadcast. Be prepared, because you never know when you're going to find yourself in a situation. I'll tell you honestly, in a number of times in my life, I have had to call 911. The cops never showed up. So what do you do then? Well, you got to make a decision. And sometimes those decisions aren't easy or pretty. If you have prepared beforehand, though, if you have thought about these things and prepared yourself, made preparations, and taken steps, you're going to find yourself in a lot better situation. And this has nothing to do with, at this point, Ms. Gonzalez and her family. That was an absolutely horrible thing to have happen. And then to find out that she had no legal recourse, I'm sure this was I can't imagine how devastating that must have been. But that being said, make sure you're prepared, because if you wait until it's time to get ready, you may not have time. So you want to make it out alive, folks. Prepare. Think ahead. All right, we're on to our last bit. We go back for this one to the state of Florida. They just don't stop down there. Excuse me a moment. Okay, I'm going to read you the headline, and then we're going to jump right in. Florida man forced to strip down to his underwear fights armed kidnapper to escape terrifying ordeal, according to the sheriff's office. We go to Sebring, I don't know, I've never been there, in Florida. A Florida man is recovering after deputies say he was kidnapped, forced to strip down to his underwear, and nearly shot. According to the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, HCSO, a man who had a significant injury to his face was seen walking on Sedora Terrace in Sebring around 8 a.m. on Saturday. This is from this week or last week. He told investigators he had been driving on Main Street in Avon Park when he saw 29-year-old Joshua Yamir Torres walking. The victim said he knew Torres and offered him a ride to Sebring. As they were traveling south on State Road 17, investigators said Torres pulled out a pistol and began to pistol whip the man and struck him in the face hard enough to break his nose, allegedly. Torres then instructed his victim to drive to a secluded spot near Basket Lake, according to the sheriff's office. Once there, investigators said the victim was forced out of the vehicle and forced to strip down to his underwear and get on his knees. Uh, let's continue. That's when, according to the sheriff's office, Torres put the firearm to the victim's head and pulled the trigger, but it did not go off. Investigators said Torres tried to re-rack the gun and pull the trigger again before the victim fought back, nearly naked, and was able to eventually run away into the orange grove in his underwears. Oh my God. This poor guy, it's not really funny. I don't know what else to do, though. This is insane. According to the sheriff's office, Torres drove away in the victim's car, which was later located in Avon Park with a large amount of blood inside. Torres was found around 6:45 p.m. on Saturday in Sebring. He was charged with attempted second-degree murder, armed carjacking, aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, false imprisonment, and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. It is unclear, according to the article, how Torres knew the victim or what his motive was. Well, I don't I don't know what to say to that other than when he allegedly had him get down on his knees while in his underwear. I'm guessing it wasn't to pray, folks. That's going to do it. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the MOA Broadcast. Remember, don't wait until you have an emergency to prepare for it. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.